Overview. The Bible as a cultural foundation of the West. The Bible is one of the most influential books in Western history, culture, and art. Even for people who are not religious, understanding the Bible helps explain many aspects of Western literature, paintings, movies, music, laws, and everyday expressions. Phrases like the forbidden fruit, the Good Samaritan, or a David versus Goliath story all come from the Bible and are still used today. Rather than a single book, the Bible is a collection of many books written over more than 1,000 years. It is divided into two main sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament mainly tells stories that originated in ancient Israel and focuses on laws, history, poetry, and the relationship between humans and God. The New Testament centers on the life and teachings of Jesus and the early Christian community. From a cultural point of view, the Bible works like a massive story archive. It contains adventure stories, political conflicts, family dramas, love poetry, philosophical debates, and moral dilemmas. Many stories deal with universal human themes such as fear, hope, jealousy, courage, betrayal, and forgiveness. These themes are why the Bible has remained relevant even in modern non-religious contexts. For teenagers, the Bible can be surprisingly relatable. Many characters are young, make mistakes, challenge authority, or struggle with identity and purpose. Kings fail, heroes doubt themselves, and ordinary people face unfair situations. These stories influenced famous works like Renaissance paintings, Hollywood movies, and fantasy novels. This summary introduces the Old Testament and the New Testament not as religious textbooks, but as cultural and literary foundations of Western civilization. Understanding these stories does not require belief, only curiosity. The Old Testament, epic stories, laws, and legends. The Old Testament is the older and longer part of the Bible. It begins with stories about the creation of the world and ends with historical records of ancient kingdoms. Many of these stories function like myths or legends that explain how people understood the world long before modern science. One of the most famous stories is the creation story in Genesis. It describes a universe created in stages, followed by the story of Adam and Eve, who eat fruit from a forbidden tree. This story introduced ideas about choice, curiosity, and consequences, which appear repeatedly in Western storytelling. The image of humans gaining knowledge but losing innocence has inspired countless books and films. Another dramatic episode is the story of Noah and the flood. Faced with a corrupted world, Noah builds a massive ark to save animals from a global disaster. This story resembles modern disaster movies and raises questions about survival, responsibility, and starting over after failure. The Old Testament also includes intense family drama. Joseph, a teenager favored by his father, is betrayed by his jealous brothers and sold into slavery. Through intelligence and resilience, he eventually becomes a powerful leader in a foreign country. His story feels like a mix of a survival drama and a political thriller, and it strongly influenced Western ideas about forgiveness and personal growth. One of the most popular action-style stories is David and Goliath. David, a young shepherd, faces a giant warrior using only a sling and a stone. This underdog story became a symbol of challenging overwhelming power, often referenced in sports, politics, and movies. The Old Testament is also filled with laws and moral debates. The Ten Commandments shaped Western legal and ethical systems, influencing ideas about justice, honesty, and respect for others. Even people who do not follow these rules religiously still encounter their influence in modern laws and social norms. Finally, the Old Testament contains poetry and philosophy. The Psalms express emotions like joy, anger, fear, and hope in poetic form, similar to song lyrics. The book of Job explores the question of why bad things happen to good people, a question still debated today. Overall, the Old Testament presents a raw and honest picture of humanity, ambitious, flawed, emotional, and constantly searching for meaning. The New Testament, a story of ideas, change, and community. The New Testament is shorter than the Old Testament and focuses on a more specific time period. Its central figure is Jesus, whose life and teachings influenced Western ethics, social values, and ideas about leadership and compassion. The story begins with the Gospels, which describe Jesus as a teacher who challenges social norms. Instead of focusing on power or wealth, he speaks about caring for the poor, forgiving enemies, and treating others with empathy. Many of his teachings are delivered through parables, short stories with surprising twists. For example, stories about helping strangers or forgiving people who wronged you continue to influence modern moral discussions. From a storytelling perspective, the New Testament includes conflict and tension. Jesus often clashes with political and religious authorities, which feels similar to modern stories about rebels or reformers who challenge the system. His execution is portrayed as a tragic injustice, a theme that appears frequently in films and novels. After this, the New Testament shifts focus to the early Christian community. The book of Acts reads like a travel adventure, following messengers spreading new ideas across the Roman world. These stories highlight communication, cultural conflict, and the difficulty of introducing new beliefs in hostile environments. Letters written to early communities discuss practical issues such as fairness, leadership, and how to live together despite differences. From a cultural perspective, these writings influenced Western ideas about equality, charity, and social responsibility. One reason the New Testament remains influential is its focus on inner change rather than external rules. It emphasizes motivation, intention, and conscience, ideas that later shaped modern psychology, human rights, and education. For teenagers, the New Testament can be seen as a collection of stories about questioning authority, redefining success, and forming supportive communities. Even without religious belief, these narratives offer insight into why Western societies value forgiveness, human dignity, and second chances.